Hello again, and welcome to episode 2 of Farrand on Film. One of the first ideas I had when all of this isolation, social distancing and online learning started was to record commentaries for each of the 6 focus films that my students and I are watching in class. With that being said, this week I'm releasing 2 podcasts. This episode is going to take you through the contexts and the required learning around Whiplash, while episode 3 will pretty much just be the film commentary. If you're not aware, Whiplash was released in 2014 and is the second feature film from director Damien Chazelle, who has since gone on to be the youngest person ever to win the Oscar for Best Director for his 2016 film La La Land. Whiplash stars Miles Teller as Andrew Neiman, a first-year music student at Schaefer University who is consumed by his need to impress his unrelenting teacher Terence Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons. So the big question then, why are we studying Whiplash? As you know, or you should do, Paper 1 of the Film Studies GCSE is focused on the key developments of American cinema. Question 5 on Paper 1 is designed to assess your knowledge of US independent film and your engagement with a specific piece of specialist writing that has been produced as either a commentary on independent cinema or on the focused film itself. For the commentary to work, you're going to need access to a copy of Whiplash. The film is available to buy online for $7.99 from iTunes, Sky Store and Google Play. You can rent it from these providers for about half the price of a purchase. If you would prefer to go old school, a new and sealed copy of the DVD from Amazon is a $5, while the Blu-ray will set you back just over £11. I'm going to take you through the context surrounding Whiplash and then the specialist writing that we need to engage with in order to successfully answer question 5 on Paper 1. So, to begin with, Whiplash had an interesting journey getting to the screen, and a journey that wasn't too dissimilar with other examples of independent cinema. The director, Damien Chazelle, has been quoted as saying that the inspiration behind Whiplash is an amalgamation of his time in a very competitive high school jazz band, and that he drew on the dread that he felt during his time in the band. The character of Fletcher was based on Chazelle's former band instructor, but with added elements of Buddy Rich, who is referenced a lot in the film. After Chazelle had written the screenplay, he began to search for investors to fund the film. In order to secure financing, Right of Way Films and Blumhouse Productions helped Chazelle turn 15 pages of his script into an 18-minute short film starring Johnny Simmons as Andrew and J.K. Simmons as Fletcher. The short version of Whiplash debuted at Sundance Film Festival in 2013 and won the Jury Award for Fiction, which then attracted investors to produce the full-length version of the script. Bold Films ultimately financed the full film for $3.3 million. Principal photography began in September of 2013, with filming taking place throughout Los Angeles. Early on, Chazelle gave J.K. Simmons direction, telling him, "I want you to take it past what you think the normal limit would be, and that I don't want to see a human being on screen anymore. I want to see a monster, a gargoyle, and an animal." Many of the band members in the movie were real musicians or music students, and Chazelle tried to capture their expressions of fear and anxiety when they were pressed by Simmons. The film was shot in 19 days, with a schedule of 14 hours of filming per day. Chazelle was involved in a serious car accident in the 3rd week of shooting and was hospitalised with a diagnosis of possible concussion, but he later returned to filming the next day to finish the film on time. Upon its theatrical release, Whiplash received universal critical acclaim and was nominated for a total of 114 awards, winning 49, including the Audience Award and the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance Film Festival in 2014, and was nominated for Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars, while it won for Editing, Sound and Supporting Actor for J.K. Simmons. In terms of its commercial success, Whiplash divided the jazz community. Some said it was a realistic representation of the obsessive dedication and the mental and physical endurance required to make great art. Others felt that it misrepresented jazz, musicians and other artists. They pointed out that Neiman didn't possess the passion and inspiration that other films about artists managed to capture, and that Andrew was more obsessed with his technique. Some critics disagreed about whether the film condones Fletcher's method. In many scenes he appears to be a bully or a sadist as he humiliates and physically assaults his students, and that his judgment is unfair and vindictive. The jazz club key sequence seems to offer some kind of rationale for his behaviour, but his revenge in the finale undermines this. Those critical of the portrayal of jazz also said that Whiplash has transformed a genre best known for improvisation and creativity into a military exercise or a game of creative ambition. The lack of African Americans in key roles was also mentioned by critics. Comparisons have been drawn between Whiplash and Black Swan, directed by Darren Aronofsky in 2010, specifically the theme of conflict between the personal and creative lives of their protagonists. There is a fantastic video that supports this by Lessons from the Screenplay on YouTube called The Anatomy of the Obsessed Artist. Whiplash seems to fall into a number of different genres. It shares more characteristics with war and sports films than the musicals or films that celebrate music, which tend to have a lighter or joyous tone. Finally, for context then, there was an extremely interesting observation made by Movie Detail on Twitter. They tweeted out pictures from Whiplash, La La Land and First Man. The pictures feature how each of those three films ends, and the caption to the pictures was, "Every Damien Chazelle movie ends with two characters staring at each other, not saying anything." So you've got Fletcher and Andrew staring at each other from Whiplash, Mia and Sebastian staring at each other from La La Land, and Neil Armstrong and his wife staring at each other from the end of First Man. Somebody quote tweeted that to add a little bit further and discussed that Whiplash was the cathartic acceptance from his abusive mentor. La La Land was the bittersweet happiness for each other's successes, and First Man was Neil apologising for the trouble that he'd put on his wife and his family. That's quite an early indicator of how Chazelle may work as an auteur. With 3 mainstream theatrical releases under his belt, it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. As previously mentioned, the key focus for question 5 is how you interact with a piece of specialist writing in relation to your understanding, view and opinions on the film. Our choice of specialist writing is option C, which is a film critic's article specific to Whiplash called Whiplash, Men and Masculinity. The article was written by Tom Beasley in January 2015 for the website thepopcornmuncher.com. I'm going to read through the specialist writing to bring this episode of the podcast to a close. Much was made in the media about the noticeable maleness of the Academy Awards this year. Not a single woman was nominated for either Best Director or Screenplay, but more than that, the Oscars 2015 was dominated by films about men and masculinity itself. Damien Chazelle's exhilarating drama Whiplash tells the story of Andrew, played by Miles Teller, as he struggles to become the lead drummer in his music school's decorated jazz band, run by tyrannical musician Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons. Andrew practices hard and knows that he's pretty good, but he needs to be validated. His mother left when he was young, so Andrew has been brought up without a female figure in his life. He craves approval, but has somewhat of a sterile relationship with his father, who doesn't seem to understand what Andrew is doing. The notion of being approved by Fletcher, a recognised alpha male, excites Andrew to the degree that he is prepared to do just about anything. Fletcher represents everything that Andrew idealises. He is a whirlwind of acid-tongue testosterone and is 100% sure of his talent. Fletcher doesn't need validation from anyone because he sits at the top of the food chain, both in terms of music and masculinity. Even Fletcher's appearance is one of masculine performance. He is stripped down in terms of his shaven head and his plain black clothing with no sort of flourish upon his body. For Fletcher, there's no need for the kind of style-conscious appearance so favoured by the modern metrosexual man. Notably, Andrew is a baby-faced youngster who seems unkempt in his appearance. He doesn't have the same focus as Fletcher. Andrew's acceptance into Fletcher's band early on in Whiplash marks, in his view, his seat at the table of masculinity. It is significant that merely being a member of the band transforms Andrew from a distant loner to the arrogant man who immediately enters into a relationship with Nicole, played by Melissa Benoist. Andrew believes that being in a relationship is a part of a man's duty, and so that he simply asks for a date from the only girl he ever meets, the box office girl at the cinema that he regularly visits. Nicole is nothing but lovely to Andrew. However, he decides to give her the chop when he realises that she impedes his path to success. For Andrew, his first real female connection is nothing more than a distraction from his work at winning the approval of the uber-macho Fletcher. When he realises that his relationship with Nicole is an inessential part of his masculine performance, he sees no reason to keep it going. For Andrew, it was never about love or even lust. Critics have bemoaned the underwritten nature of Nicole's role in Whiplash, and it is irksome in such a male-dominated awards year, but her character in the film is a reflection of how the protagonist sees her, For Andrew, just like every other kind of human connection, she's barely a human being and merely a utility on his path to masculine utopia. Masculinity becomes a performance and a competition between two figures battling to out-alpha the other is the film's finale. In an attempt at revenge for Andrew making a complaint about Fletcher's treatment, the latter sets him up for a fall at an important concert. After initially fleeing the stage, Andrew returns and defiantly leads the band himself, defying Fletcher's authority and indeed his masculinity. The final sequence focuses on how much masculine conflicts can abruptly turn into magic, when the two men go from full-blooded war to grudging respect in the space of a single scene. Andrew finally succeeds in earning the respect of Fletcher by beating him at his own game. He proves that he can hold his own in the masculine arena by taking on the alpha, and in that scene, Andrew finally succeeds in achieving his own personal masculine utopia. Okay, so there's a lot of information to take in there, but nothing that you shouldn't already be aware of, and you should be ready now to dive into a rewatch of Whiplash along with the next episode of the podcast. So tomorrow's episode will be a commentary, ready for you to rewatch and take in more of that information and to really apply it to your knowledge of the film. So, ending the podcast in the usual way then. You can help support Farrand on Film by following us on Twitter at Farrand on Film, by liking us on Facebook at facebook.com/Farrand on Film, and by leaving a 5-star review at your favourite podcast provider. Thank you for listening to part 1 of the Whiplash coverage. Part 2 or episode 3 will be available tomorrow or immediately following, depending on when you're listening, so feel free to carry on through or maybe treat yourself to a little bit of a break. In the meantime, stay safe, stay indoors, look after each other, and I will see you in episode 3.